My name is Jacob Anderson and I thought I had it all figured out. 16 years of marriage to Rebecca, a beautiful house in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado, and a daughter who was the light of our lives. I worked as a construction project manager, pulling in a decent six-figure salary. Not rich, but comfortable enough to provide for my family and save for retirement. Rebecca and I met in college. She was studying art history, I was in engineering. Opposites attract, they say, and we were living proof. She was creative, spontaneous, full of life. I was practical, steady, the rock she could lean on. For years it worked perfectly. After Chloe was born, Rebecca decided to be a stay-at-home mom. It made sense financially and emotionally. She threw herself into motherhood with the same passion she'd once reserved for her art. PTA meetings, soccer practice, school fundraisers. She was the perfect suburban wife and mother. But then Chloe left for college at Northwestern, and something changed in Rebecca. She seemed restless, like she was searching for something. I understood, empty nest syndrome is real. I encouraged her to pursue her interests, maybe go back to school, find a hobby. I wanted her to be happy. That's when she started talking about volunteering at the local animal shelter. She'd always loved dogs and it seemed like the perfect outlet for her nurturing nature. She'd come home with stories about the animals, the other volunteers, how fulfilling it was to help creatures in need. I was proud of her for finding purpose again. The first red flag should have been the clothes. Rebecca had always dressed well, but suddenly she was buying expensive outfits constantly. Designer jeans, silk blouses, jewelry I'd never seen before. When I asked about it, she said she wanted to look professional for her volunteer work and that she'd found some great sales. Then came the lunches. Our joint credit card started showing charges at upscale restaurants in downtown Denver, places we'd never been together. When I mentioned it, she said the volunteer coordinator often took the team out for appreciation meals. It seemed reasonable. But the charges kept coming. Expensive flowers, which I wasn't sending. Hotel bills, which made no sense since we lived 20 minutes from downtown. Shopping sprees at stores I'd never heard of. In 3 months, she'd spent over $15,000 on things I couldn't identify or understand. I'm not a controlling husband. I've never monitored Rebecca's spending or questioned her purchases. We'd always trusted each other completely. But these amounts were significant, and some of the charges were genuinely puzzling. When I finally sat her down with the credit card statements, Rebecca's reaction was immediate and emotional. She broke down in tears, explaining that she'd been secretly helping a family the shelter had connected her with, a single mother with 3 kids who'd lost their apartment and was living in their car. I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd think I was being too generous, she sobbed. But Jacob, you should see these children. They have nothing. I've been helping them get back on their feet, clothes, food, a security deposit for an apartment. I know it's a lot of money, but how could I not help? Her tears seemed genuine. The story made sense, given Rebecca's compassionate nature. I felt like a terrible husband for questioning her generosity. Here she was, using our money to help children in need, and I was treating her like a suspect. I apologized profusely and told her how proud I was of her big heart. But something still felt off. The amounts were massive, and some of the purchases, like expensive men's clothing and electronics, didn't fit the story of helping a family with children. When I mentioned this, Rebecca explained that the mother had an older teenage son who needed work clothes for job interviews, and they needed a laptop for the kids' schoolwork. I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. The turning point came when I decided to surprise Rebecca by making a donation to the animal shelter in her honor. I figured I could contribute to the cause that was clearly so important to her, maybe even volunteer myself. I drove to the Denver Animal Shelter on a Saturday morning, expecting to find a bustling operation full of dedicated volunteers like my wife. The reality was jarring. Rebecca Anderson? The receptionist, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, frowned at me. I'm sorry, but we don't have any volunteers by that name. Are you sure you have the right shelter? My stomach dropped. Maybe she uses her maiden name? Rebecca Walsh? No, sir. I've been here 8 years and I know all our regular volunteers. There's no Rebecca Walsh either. I tried 3 more animal shelters in the Denver area. Same result. No Rebecca Anderson, no Rebecca Walsh. No record of my wife volunteering anywhere. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel, my mind racing through possibilities. Maybe she volunteered somewhere else entirely. Maybe she'd lied about where she was volunteering but was still doing legitimate charity work. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. But deep down I knew. The sick feeling in my stomach, the way puzzle pieces were suddenly clicking into place. I knew my wife was lying to me about something major. I got home to find Rebecca on the phone in our kitchen, speaking in hushed, intimate tones I hadn't heard her use with me in months. She was laughing softly, twirling her hair like a teenage girl talking to her crush. When she heard my footsteps, she quickly ended the call. "Who was that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Oh, just Sarah from the shelter. We were planning next week's volunteer schedule." But I'd seen the name on her phone screen before she hung up. "Ryan? Sarah?" I pressed. Rebecca's face flushed slightly. "Did I say Sarah? I meant Rachel. Rachel from yoga class. We were talking about the shelter volunteering too. She's thinking of joining." The lies were piling up, each one more elaborate than the last. I felt like I was watching my wife become a stranger before my eyes. Over the next week, I paid closer attention without letting on that I suspected anything. Rebecca was getting text messages constantly, always quickly deleting them after reading. She'd excuse herself to take phone calls, claiming they were from girlfriends I'd never heard of. Her mood swings were dramatic, euphoric after these conversations, irritable and distant with me. The most painful part was watching her lie so effortlessly. She'd look me straight in the eye and fabricate elaborate stories about her day, her activities, her emotions. This woman who I'd shared a bed with for 16 years, who'd given birth to my child, who knew my every thought and feeling, she was lying to me with the skill of a professional con artist. The financial evidence kept mounting. A $5,000 cash withdrawal from our savings account on a day Rebecca claimed she'd been homesick with the flu. Hotel charges in downtown Denver for afternoons when she was supposedly at yoga class. Expensive gifts purchased from jewelry stores I'd never set foot in. But the smoking gun came from an unexpected source. I was at our local bank, refinancing our mortgage to take advantage of lower interest rates. The loan officer, Martha, who'd handled our accounts for years, made casual conversation while processing paperwork. "Your wife was in here yesterday," Martha mentioned. She seemed upset about something. "Had to make another large cash withdrawal. What was it, $7,000 this time? She asked me not to mention it to you, said it was a surprise for your anniversary." Our anniversary was 8 months away. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Rebecca slept peacefully beside me. $7,000. In cash. That she'd explicitly asked the bank not to tell me about. The woman who used to discuss $50 purchases with me was secretly withdrawing thousands without my knowledge. I had to know the truth. At 3 a.m., while Rebecca was deep in sleep, I carefully took her phone from the nightstand. Her passcode was our wedding anniversary, she'd never changed it. My hands were trembling as I opened her messages. What I found destroyed me. Hundreds of text messages with someone named Ryan Mitchell. The conversation history went back 7 months. Photos of them together in hotel rooms, intimate messages that made me nauseous, and worst of all, detailed discussions about money. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby. Did you get the cash for my rent?" "Ryan. Of course, sweetheart. $2,800 just like you needed. Anything for you." "Rebecca. You're amazing. What about the motorcycle payment?" "Ryan. Already handled. $450 transferred to your account this morning." "Rebecca. I love you so much. You know Jacob doesn't appreciate you like I do." "Ryan. He's so boring and predictable. You make me feel alive again." "Rebecca." Message after message revealed the devastating truth. Rebecca wasn't just having an affair. She was financially supporting her lover with our money. Our retirement savings, our daughter's college fund, our emergency reserves, it was all going to this man. I scrolled through months of evidence. Rent payments, car payments, credit card bills, shopping sprees, expensive dinners, weekend getaways, all funded by money Rebecca was stealing from our joint accounts. The total was staggering, over $60,000 in 7 months. But what hurt most were the messages where they mocked me. Rebecca had shared intimate details about our marriage, our financial situation, even my personal insecurities. They laughed about how clueless I was, how easy it was to manipulate me, how stupid I was for trusting her completely. I sat in our bathroom with the door locked, reading message after message until dawn broke. My wife of 16 years wasn't just cheating on me, she was systematically robbing me while ridiculing me to her lover. The most devastating message was from just 2 weeks earlier. "Ryan, honey, I have amazing news. Jacob is thinking about cashing out his share of the construction company to start his own business. That's almost $200,000 that would go into our joint account. We could finally be together without worrying about money." "Rebecca. Seriously? That's incredible. I knew you'd find a way. You're so much smarter than him." "Ryan. I just need to convince him it's a good investment opportunity. He trusts me completely, so it shouldn't be hard. Rebecca. She wasn't just stealing from our current accounts, she was planning to steal my entire life savings, my business equity, everything I'd worked for over decades. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and went downstairs. I sat in my home office looking at family photos that now seemed like evidence of an elaborate lie, and tried to figure out what to do next. By sunrise I'd made my decision. The next morning I waited until Rebecca left for her yoga class, which I now knew was actually a rendezvous with Ryan. Then I drove straight to our bank. I need to close our joint checking and savings accounts immediately, I told Martha. Is everything all right, Mr. Anderson? This seems sudden. Everything is fine. I just need to restructure our finances for tax purposes. It wasn't entirely a lie. I opened new accounts in my name only, transferred all our funds, and changed the direct deposit for my paycheck. Legally, since the accounts were originally opened in my name with Rebecca added as an authorized user, I had every right to do this. By the time Rebecca returned from her yoga session, she was effectively cut off from our money. I was waiting in the kitchen when she came home, glowing with post-affair satisfaction that I now recognized for what it was. How was yoga? I asked. Great. Really worked up a sweat today, she replied with a smile that made me sick. An hour later, she was in our bedroom trying to use her debit card for an online purchase when she discovered the accounts were closed. She came downstairs looking confused and slightly panicked. Jacob, something's wrong with our bank accounts. My card isn't working. I looked up from my laptop. I know about Ryan. The color drained from her face instantly. For a moment she said nothing, and in that silence I saw the calculation in her eyes, trying to figure out how much I knew, what story might still work. I don't know what you're talking about, she said finally. Ryan Mitchell. 7 months of affair. $60,000 of our money spent on him. The messages about my business money. All of it. Rebecca's composure cracked. She tried denying it, then minimizing it, then explaining it as a temporary mistake. But I'd read every message. I knew about the hotel rooms, the expensive gifts, the rent payments, the car loan, even the vacation they'd planned to take with my retirement money. It's not what you think, Jacob. Yes, I made mistakes, but it's not serious. I don't love him. I love you. I've always loved you. This was just... I was confused, feeling old and invisible. He made me feel young again, but it doesn't mean anything. You stole $60,000 from our family to give to your boyfriend. I didn't steal anything. It's our money and I was going to pay it back. How? You don't have a job. You've been lying to me for months about everything. Where you go, what you do, who you're with. You were planning to steal my business money. The fight lasted hours. Rebecca cycled through denial, anger, bargaining, and promises to change. She admitted to the affair but claimed it was emotional, not physical, a lie I knew was false from the hotel receipts. She promised to end it immediately, to pay back every penny, to do whatever it took to save our marriage. But the trust was gone. Even if she was being honest now, which I doubted, how could I ever believe her again? How could I share a bed with someone who'd spent months plotting to rob me blind? How could I rebuild a relationship with someone who'd mocked me to her lover? That night I slept in our guest room. Rebecca texted and called Ryan frantically, not knowing that I was monitoring her phone activities through our family phone plan. I listened to her tearful voicemails begging him to call her back, explaining that her husband had found out but that she'd figure out a way to fix things. Ryan's response came the next morning. He blocked her number. When Rebecca realized her lover had abandoned her the moment the money stopped flowing, she became desperate. She begged me to reconsider, promised therapy, swore she'd do anything to save our marriage. But her promises rang hollow when I discovered she'd also opened credit cards in my name without my knowledge, running up additional debt to fund her affair. The credit card fraud was the final straw. This wasn't just adultery, it was systematic financial abuse and identity theft. I moved out that week and filed for divorce. The hardest part was telling our daughter. Chloe was in her senior year at Northwestern, focused on her studies and excited about graduation. She'd always been close to both of us, but especially to Rebecca. The news devastated her. Dad, are you sure you're not overreacting? People make mistakes. Mom loves our family. How do you explain to your child that her mother spent her college fund on an affair? How do you tell her that the woman she'd idolized had been living a double life for months? I showed Chloe the financial records, not the intimate messages but the money trail. $60,000 of family savings spent on another man while she was taking student loans for college expenses. But why would Mom do this? This isn't like her at all. That was the most painful realization of all. Maybe we'd never really known Rebecca. Maybe the loving wife and mother had always been a performance, and the woman capable of such calculated deception was who she really was. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Rebecca hired an aggressive lawyer and tried to claim half of everything, including my business equity in our house. She painted herself as the victim of a controlling husband who'd trapped her in an unhappy marriage. But financial records don't lie. The judge was not sympathetic to a spouse who'd committed identity theft and systematically stolen marital assets to fund an extramarital affair. Rebecca's own text messages, which my lawyer subpoenaed, revealed her calculating nature and the extent of her deception. The most shocking revelation came during depositions. Rebecca's lover, Ryan Mitchell, was compelled to testify. I learned that he was 28 years old, 12 years younger than Rebecca. He worked part-time as a personal trainer and part-time as a bartender, barely making ends meet until he met my wife. Ryan testified that Rebecca had approached him at the gym where he worked. She'd been the pursuer, not him. She'd offered to help with his financial problems almost immediately, claiming she had access to plenty of money from her wealthy husband. She told me her marriage was already over, Ryan testified. Said her husband was emotionally abusive and that she was planning to leave him anyway. She said the money she was giving me was her own inheritance that he didn't know about. Even in conducting her affair, Rebecca had lied to everyone involved. The most damaging testimony came when Ryan revealed that Rebecca had been planning to leave me for months, but only after she could secure access to my business funds. She'd encouraged me to cash out my equity specifically so she could take half in the divorce and start a new life with her lover. But perhaps the most devastating revelation was that Ryan was married too. He had a wife and 2 young children. Rebecca knew this but didn't care. She was funding his entire lifestyle while his wife worked 2 jobs, thinking her husband was struggling to make ends meet as a trainer and bartender. The other woman's wife eventually found out and filed for divorce as well, naming Rebecca as a correspondent. Both marriages were destroyed, for lives shattered, 2 children left wondering why their father had abandoned them for an older woman who was stealing money from her own family. But Ryan's story didn't end there. During the divorce proceedings, we discovered he'd been running the same scam on 2 other women simultaneously. Rebecca wasn't his only victim. She was one of 3 married women he was manipulating for money. The other 2 women were also financing his lifestyle, believing they were his only lover. When Rebecca found out about the other women, she had a complete breakdown. The man she'd destroyed her marriage for, the person she'd risked everything to be with, had been using her just as coldly as she'd been using me. She'd lost her husband, her daughter's respect, her home, her financial security, and her lover. All for someone who saw her as nothing more than a source of income. The legal proceedings dragged on for 8 months. Rebecca tried every tactic her lawyer could think of to claim a larger settlement, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. In the end, she received minimal alimony and had to get a job for the first time in 16 years. Watching my wife of nearly 2 decades reduced to working as a cashier at a discount retail store while living in a studio apartment was surreal. This was the woman who'd once hosted elegant dinner parties, who'd been the envy of other wives in our social circle, who'd seemed to have everything she could want. The saddest part was seeing how the divorce affected Chloe. She'd always been proud of our family, often telling friends how lucky she was to have parents who loved each other so much. The revelation that it had all been a lie, that her mother was capable of such deception, shook her faith in relationships entirely. How do you ever trust anyone again, Dad? If Mom could lie to us for months while stealing our money and having an affair, how do you know if anyone is being honest? I didn't have an answer for her. I was asking myself the same question every day. The house felt enormous and empty after the divorce was finalized. Every room held memories of our life together, Rebecca's art supplies in the sunroom, family photos from vacations that now seemed fake, the kitchen where we'd shared thousands of meals while she was secretly plotting to rob me. Friends and family members were supportive, but many of them admitted they'd had no idea anything was wrong. Rebecca had been that good at maintaining the facade of a happy marriage while conducting her affair and theft behind the scenes. She seemed so devoted to you and Chloe, my sister said. I can't believe she was capable of this. Neither could I. That was the most disturbing part, discovering that someone you thought you knew completely was actually a stranger. The financial recovery took longer than the emotional healing. Rebecca had maxed out credit cards I didn't know existed, taken cash advances against our home equity, and even borrowed money from our retirement accounts. The total damage was close to $90,000. Money that should have been funding our daughter's education and our golden years. But money can be earned back. Trust, once shattered so completely, is much harder to rebuild. A year after the divorce was final, I ran into Rebecca at a grocery store. She looked older, tired, defeated. Gone was the confident, radiant woman I'd married. In her place stood someone who looked like she'd aged a decade in 2 years. "Jacob," she said quietly. "How are you?" "I'm doing well," I replied, which was mostly true. "How are you?" "Getting by. Working 2 jobs now. The retail job doesn't pay much." There was an awkward pause. Part of me felt sorry for her. This woman who destroyed her own life chasing a fantasy with a man who was using her. But then I remembered the calculated nature of her deception, the months of lies, the mockery in her messages to Ryan. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly. "For everything. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry." I nodded. "I appreciate that. Do you think there's any chance we could try again? I know I made terrible mistakes, but we had 16 good years. Doesn't that count for something?" Looking at her, I felt sadness but no love, pity but no attraction, regret for what we'd lost but no desire to rebuild. The woman I'd loved hadn't made mistakes, she'd made choices. Calculated, deliberate choices to betray our family for months while planning to steal everything I'd worked for. "I hope you find happiness, Rebecca. But not with me." As I walked away, I heard her start to cry. It didn't move me the way her tears once had. I'd learned that tears could be just another form of manipulation. Today, 3 years after discovering the affair, I'm still single. I've dated a few women, but I find myself looking for signs of deception in every conversation, every unexplained expense, every phone call they take in another room. The ability to trust completely may never return. Chloe graduated from college and moved to Seattle for her career. She maintains a relationship with her mother but keeps her distance emotionally. She's told me she's not sure she'll ever want to get married, having seen how easily true love can become a weapon. The house is smaller now. I sold the family home and bought a condo downtown. Fewer memories, less maintenance, a fresh start. I've thrown myself into work and started my own construction company with the business equity that Rebecca had planned to steal. It's doing well, ironically better than I probably would have managed if I'd stayed married and trusted her with our finances. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never discovered the truth. Would Rebecca have gone through with her plan to take half of my business money? Would she have eventually left me for Ryan? Or would she have continued the affair indefinitely while maintaining the facade of our marriage? I'll never know. What I do know is that the Rebecca I thought I knew, loving wife, devoted mother, trustworthy partner, never actually existed. She was a character my wife played when it suited her, abandoned the moment she found something she wanted more. The most painful lesson I learned is that you can share a bed, a home, a life with someone for decades and still not really know them at all. The person sleeping beside you might be planning your financial ruin while telling you they love you. The mother of your children might be stealing their college fund to impress a lover who sees her as nothing more than a source of easy money. But I also learned that survival is possible. That you can rebuild from betrayal, even betrayal this deep and calculated. That finding out who someone really is, no matter how painful, is better than living a lie. I still wear my wedding ring sometimes, not from nostalgia but as a reminder. A reminder that trust is precious, that love requires honesty, and that the most dangerous lies are the ones told by people who claim to love you most. Rebecca destroyed our marriage, but she didn't destroy me. And maybe someday I'll be ready to trust again. But if I ever am, it will be with full knowledge of how much damage someone can do when they decide your love is just another resource to be exploited. The hardest truth I've had to accept is that some betrayals are so complete, so calculated, that forgiveness becomes impossible. Not because of anger, but because forgiveness requires believing that the person who hurt you is capable of genuine remorse and change. After seeing the depth of Rebecca's deception, after reading her cruel mockery of our marriage, after watching her try to manipulate me even during the divorce proceedings, I realized she simply wasn't the person I thought she was. You can't forgive someone who doesn't really exist. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.